Today I review X-Men Apocalypse. Hello and welcome to the show with reviews. I'm Auram, and normally we review 3 comics on this show every week, but today we're going to be reviewing Fox's X-Men Apocalypse. I almost said Marvel's X-Men Apocalypse, but it's not really, it's Fox's X-Men Apocalypse. So, let's get started. Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen my movie reviews before, the way that I like to structure them is I start with what I liked about the movie, then I go into what I didn't like about the movie, and then I open the floodgates for spoilers and everything. So, basically what that means is this will be a spoiler-free review for the most part, up until I say that there are going to be spoilers, and I'll have an annotation for you to click and skip forward, and I'll also give you a time code for what to skip to. So, that being said, let's jump into what I liked about X-Men Apocalypse. First off, overall, this movie was great in my opinion. Going into X-Men movies, a lot of the time, I am kind of indifferent on them. I have either no expectations or low expectations, but in this case, everything was just fantastic. I loved it. All the characters' portrayal in the film seemed very on point to their comic counterparts and everything like that. The writing was fine. There was just, everything just seemed like X-Men fare for the most part. And that X-Men fare thing is interesting to me because all of these X-Men movies have a very present theme. They all feel like an X-Men movie. And that was very noticeable from the start all the way through this movie, as it felt like another installment in this X-Men universe that Fox has created. And I think for the first time since X2, maybe, Apocalypse really lets you feel that X-Men comic book kind of tone that's going on. There's all these characters that are walking around in the background that may be important, may not be important, like Jubilee, for example. I don't even think she's named at all in the film, but we know she's Jubilee, and she's just kind of there, and that's kind of how, like, the X-Men books are always presented. There's always these crazy mutants in the background, just that could have a lot of significance to them, or just could be totally just there because they look cool. And yeah, that could kind of be construed as a bad thing, but honestly, in my opinion, I think it's just them sticking to the source material and showing that the X-Men, there's a lot of them, and just here they are. Other than that, the score and sound design were on point, as they normally are in these X-Men films. The theme that they weave in through the films is really good. I've kind of missed having a theme. Like, since the Avengers, I feel like, there hasn't been a good, like, superhero theme that is just woven throughout a film or a show. Like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does a really good job of that, how they weave their theme into the score and everything, and that's done very well here. And of course, jokes are always something that's kind of criticized in comic book movies, especially nowadays. Ever since Marvel Studios started up, comic book movies have kind of been more lighthearted, and I think this movie is a nice happy medium between normal Marvel Studios fare with pretty much a joke every few minutes, and Civil War, which is a Marvel Studios film, but like I said in my review of that, it is very much less heavy on the jokes. So there are jokes in this film, but they feel very natural, and they feel like they needed to be there, or if they didn't need to be there, they just kind of happen and they hit well. There are no jokes that fell flat and felt unnecessary, if that makes more sense. So I think that's a good summary of what I liked about the movie, so now let's move on to what I didn't like about the movie. Okay, so my major criticism with this film is that the first half of it kind of feels like more than one movie. Kind of like what I said about Batman v Superman, where that was just 3 movies in one. It's not as bad here, but it's definitely present. Like, there are so many things going on with so many characters being introduced, and Apocalypse is trying to do his thing, and then all these other X-Men are trying to do their thing, and it's just eventually everything comes together. Like, when everyone culminates in the final battle, everything is fine. It makes sense, and it's a lot better than the first half. But just, that's kind of one of my criticisms, is that things just felt like there was too much going on, which is kind of unavoidable with a film with this cast. They could have very easily split this into 2 movies. I don't think it would have been as good as it is if they did, but they could have. And as is the case with most superhero/comic book movies nowadays, there are some minor plot holes, but I'm willing to forgive the movie for that, seeing as I expected a lot more plot holes with the cast being as big as it is. The last thing I wanted to comment on in relation to what I didn't like about the movie is the whole time I was just thinking, where are they gonna go from here? This is legit Apocalypse. This is the end of the world. And they show that a lot in the film, that shit's going down. So, where do they go from here? Before I say where they do go from here, this is where I'm going to get into spoilers, and literally I'm going to say a big spoiler right after this. So, if you don't want to hear that, or any of the spoilers that I say after that, click an annotation right here, I guess, and just skip ahead, or just skip to the time code that's on screen as well. So where do they go from Apocalypse? Where do they go from the literal end of the world? They go to the fucking Phoenix. And yes, I know, they did this in X3, but it is much better dealt with here. There is a part in the film where Jean Grey is pretty much the crux of beating Apocalypse, and Charles Xavier is like, hey, Jean, you gotta help me out, bro. And then she just kind of, she releases her power, she finally just kind of submits to her power, and you hear this, like, fucking bird scream, and then she just lights up in fire, and there's this huge, like, fire that goes around her, and it's in the shape of the Phoenix, and you can see, like, the Phoenix in her eyes, and it is so well done. It's so cool. It's so much better and more subtle than they did in X3, and I guess at the end of X2 when they teased it. It's just, that was the part of the film where I was on the edge of my seat and I was like, holy shit, they're doing the Phoenix. I am terrified because I know what this means. And that's another thing that I really liked about the scene, is I was worried that other people wouldn't know what was going on and why they were showing that. But it works in the film because it's just her being strong. They've set Jean Grey up to be this strong telepath that has unimaginable power, and that's what you're seeing if you don't know what the Phoenix is. But if you do know what the Phoenix is, you're seeing that as well as her submitting to the Phoenix. So yeah, I really loved that. Major props to the writers and the directors of how they pulled that off. It was great. I don't want to get into too much spoilers because obviously I want you to go see the movie because I really liked it and I think you should like it too. So one more thing I did want to touch on, though, is they made a joke when there's a part where Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, and Jubilee all go to the movies, which that was one of the plot holes. They didn't really explain how they were able to hide Nightcrawler from everyone. But they go to the movies and they see Return of the Jedi, and they come out of the film and they talk. They're like, I think Empire was better, and so I think Scott was like, no, I like A New Hope the best, and then they all agree that the third movie, Return of the Jedi, is usually the worst, and I think the line is, well, we can all agree that the third one is usually the worst, which I found hilarious on two accounts. One, because this is the third in, like, this new kind of X-Men trilogy, so are they kind of making a comment about that? And three, obviously, it was to bash X3, but I don't know, was Bryan Singer like, I'm gonna cover my bases. If this movie is bad, don't worry, I know it's bad. But yeah, that's pretty much my review. I really liked X-Men Apocalypse. Just go see it for yourself. I don't know why reviewers are bashing it so hard. I haven't read any other reviews. I've just seen the Rotten Tomatoes score, and people were saying that it's like the worst X-Men movie ever. But honestly, X-Men movies have been back for a while, and they've been good, in my opinion. Even the Wolverine, which people didn't really like all that much, I didn't have that big of a problem with it. I mean, obviously there are some really bad scenes in that film, but it wasn't awful by any stretch of the imagination. It was just kind of there, and these last three X-Men movies have been great, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my review. Talk about what you thought about the movie in the comments, and we can have some jaunty discussion. I'm sure this movie is just as polarizing as Batman v Superman from what I've seen, so go crazy down there. And of course, be sure to subscribe before you head out so you don't miss out on anything that I upload every other Wednesday. I promise we're getting back to that soon, and every Saturday. With that all being said, thank you so much for watching. Next time I go bald so I can line up more closely with my source material, but the catch is I cause the end of the world just so I can go bald.